like I said, like do an intro to meditation, and then we'll do a quick breathing meditation, which is our kind of first foray into meditation. And then we're going to talk about, we're going to focus on a topic today. And today's topic is about small acts of kindness. You've probably heard that phrase before. Well, we're going to look at, like, do small acts of kindness really make a difference? Like, do they actually matter, right? Do we believe that they matter? And we'll do some investigation with that and meditate on it and see what we can kind of come up with. All right. Ask questions throughout the whole thing. If you have a question, type it in chat. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can email me afterwards. I'll put my email in the chat towards the end of the session. But you can take advantage of the live format. That's what I love about it. So don't be afraid to ask questions. All right. Sound good? So meditation is a technique to familiarize your mind with something, right? And in general, given the choice, we would probably want to familiarize our mind with good things: being calm, being patient, being happy, gratitude, like all those things, right? Given the choice, we'll probably choose that over anger or something like that. So that's kind of the overall gist, is we're kind of using meditation to familiarize our mind, right? And you're probably here, especially if you're new, to relax, right? It's the most common entry point into meditation. And so meditation gets us familiar with having a relaxed mind. It's like a little subtle difference, right? We're going to become so familiar with having a relaxed mind, calm mind, that it's going to be easier for us to be relaxed when we need to. Sort of like when you're learning to drive, right? Early on, it was very difficult. You had to focus on a lot of things. Here's the mirrors, and here's the radio that shouldn't be on when I'm driving. Here's the gas and the brake. Now it's like just so simple to drive. We can do so many other things while we're driving. It's unbelievable, because driving is familiar to us, but it wasn't at one point. And so meditation is a bit of a training as well, right? Right now, we're not familiar with how to be calm all the time. It just seems to like come or go, right? We're at the whim of what our mind is doing. So the first step of meditation, and there's really like two parts, right? The first step is to relax our mind. And then the next part is to use that relaxed mind to investigate something, right? And that's what we're going to investigate our topic today. But first, we have to relax. And the reason that we need to relax is because as you very well know, when you are not relaxed, you're not thinking very clearly, right? When we're in like a panic and stuff, we might do and say things that they're not us. We're not ourselves, right? We're not our normal, efficient, patient, calm selves. So we want to relax our mind first so we can use it productively. And the analogy that I love to use here is, if you're kind of staring at a still lake, you can see the reflection in the lake quite clearly, right? If it starts to rain a little bit, maybe I can't see the reflection as well. Might be able to see a little bit. But now if it starts to really downpour, you can't see the reflection at all. It's just not clear. And this is our mind. Our mind is normally a still lake, right? Very calm, very peaceful, very reasonable. And all of the anxiety, distraction, stress, to-do lists running around our head all day, these are like raindrops falling on the lake. And they kind of compound they kind of make our mind not clear, just like the reflection would not be clear from the raindrops, right? So we want to start to clear away some of these raindrops, right? And some is a very important word to use here, because the temptation is to, of course, remove all. I want to be totally calm, totally peaceful, totally relaxed all the time. And that is a great goal, and maybe we'll get there. But even if we're able to clear away some of the raindrops, what happens to the reflection? Becomes more clear, right? So our goal is to clear away some of the raindrops in our mind, so to speak, some of the stressors, some of the distracting thoughts that are bouncing around in our head, right? And to do this, we're going to use a technique called single-pointed concentration. A very fancy way of saying focus on one thing. Are you good at that? Are you good at focusing on one thing? I don't think any of us are, really. Why? We're not familiar with it. We're very familiar with multitasking, right? If we're not doing 100 things simultaneously, then we are doing something wrong, right? So we're not very familiar with focusing on one thing. So that's why this can sometimes become challenging, right? When we're starting meditation. But the concept is we're going to focus so exclusively on one thing that all the other things, the thoughts and distractions, are going to start to fade away a little bit, right? Sort of like if you've ever been in the zone at work, working on a project or exercising, cooking. You're just so plugged into what you're doing that, the normal noise and distractions that are there, it's like they're gone. It's a very bizarre phenomenon, right? They're gone. You don't hear them, right? Maybe you're working on something really diligently. Someone calls your name. You don't even hear them calling your name, right? So it's the same kind of concept, only we're going to do it intentionally, right? We're going to intentionally focus on our breath so much that all the other thoughts start to melt away a little bit. And we start to relax. We clear away some of those raindrops. This is called breathing meditation. You've definitely heard of this. It's pretty common these days, which is kind of cool. And breathing meditation, the reason that we use our breath is quite simply because flow state. You got it. Exactly. The reason that we use our breath is that it's always with us, right? You always have your breath with us. So if you become pretty good at using your breath as a focal point to relax, you got a pretty solid tool in your tool belt wherever you are, right? And it kind of reinforces a very important part of meditation, that we don't need specific perfect conditions to do this, right? We don't need like the Zen garden, retreating to the cave, going into the mountains for months. No, we don't need to do any of that. We don't need perfect quiet or anything like that. All we need is our breath, a little effort, and patience. And we can do this, right? We can relax. We can begin to calm our mind a little bit. Sound good? We're going to do one now. This is called breathing meditation, right? And from an instructional standpoint, it's very simple, right? You're just going to focus on your breath. You follow along with what I'm saying, but essentially you're just going to focus on your breath. And then when you notice that you're no longer focused on your breath, you're going to be like, oh, okay. And then you're going to bring your attention back, right? We're just going to repeat this kind of over and over again. Now I'm going to guide it, right? So that we don't start getting too far down the rabbit hole of other things that we need to do. But it's very simple, right? And over time, you're going to find that some of the distracting thoughts are starting to fade away. That flow state, like Van said, right? Any questions before we get started? If you have any questions, like I said, please just fire away. Okay. So, if you're sitting down, wonderful. If you're in a chair, great. Cushion, great. If you're laying down, that's also fine. Doesn't really matter. Just be relaxed. We don't want to fall asleep, to the best of our ability. Sometimes it happens. If it happens, at least you're getting some rest. But meditation is kind of like an active participation. But if you're starting to get a little drowsy, don't worry about it. But essentially, we're trying to be kind of alert while we're doing this, while we're investigating, focusing, concentration. Right? So you can sit in a comfortable position and go ahead and close your eyes and follow along with what I'm saying. Whenever we start a meditation, the first thing we always do is check in with ourselves. How are you feeling right now? Happy, sad, tired, energetic, neutral, whatever it is, it does not matter. All that matters is you notice. This is called mindfulness. Noticing what your mind is doing moment to moment. So what is your mind doing in this moment? And having checked in with ourselves, we can turn our full attention to our breathing. In and out of our nose, very gently, very naturally. We do not need to take big, deep breaths or forcefully exhale. Just breathe normally, in and out. See if you can follow your full breath in and then follow your full breath out. Allow yourself to relax. You deserve it. In and out, very gently, very naturally. And at some point, you may find your mind has drifted a bit. It's no longer focused exclusively on your breathing. Maybe it's thinking about something that happened earlier, or something you have to do later. Whenever you notice that your mind has drifted away, just gently guide it back. Guide your attention back to enjoying your full breath in and enjoying your full breath out. In and out, very gently, very naturally. Allow yourself to relax into your breathing. In and out. Keep bringing your attention back to your breath whenever it drifts away. This is meditation. You are meditating. You are training your mind to relax, to be peaceful, to be calm. How wonderful. How wonderful that you are able to do this all on your own, just by focusing on your full breath in and your full breath out. Just enjoy breathing for a little while longer. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open up your eyes. Relax your concentration. Let your mind run wild again. How'd that go? So, that might have been hard, all right? I've been doing this a long time. It's still very difficult for me at times. And the reason is familiarity. Familiarity is everything, absolutely everything. We're just not familiar with doing this, right? We're familiar with doing the opposite of this. Lovely. Hate to come out of it. That's a great experience. Some days it like flows really easy. Other days it might be tough depending on, how busy our mind is. But I'm glad that you had a good experience, Nancy. Thanks for sharing. But if it was difficult, that's okay, because guess what? Driving was difficult when we first sat behind the wheel, right? So because we're not familiar with focusing on our breath, right, and having our mind be okay with this, it can sometimes be challenging. But over time, with training, this will become easier, right? We're going to be able to clear away the raindrops easier, more efficiently, right? It's the same concept as learning anything, right? Good. Okay. Any other questions on breathing meditation before we get going on our topic? Feel free, if something pops up while I'm talking, please do just type it. I'll stop what I'm doing and answer it to the best of my ability. So today, like I said, we're going to focus on a specific topic now, right? We've cleared away the raindrops on our lake even just a little bit. And now we don't just want to walk away. We want to look at the reflection, analyze it a little bit, right? This is called contemplation. This is the second part of meditation, right? So today, what we're going to look at is the concept of small acts of kindness. And like, what are those, and do they actually kind of make a difference, right? We hear that they make a difference, but do we believe it, right? Do we believe that they actually matter? And so before we get into that, I just want to recap a little bit what we talked about 2 weeks ago, because they're kind of intimately related. 2 weeks ago, we talked about this concept of instincts of kindness, right? We defined it as a spontaneous mental thought of doing something kind. You all have these throughout the day, right? You might not notice them. They come very quickly, leave very quickly. Maybe we're not paying attention. We're not like actively trying to pay attention to them, but you all have them all day long. So maybe like an example would be you pass somebody on the street who is homeless, and you have this kind of spontaneous instinct to help them, to give them money or something like that, right? Or you see somebody's upset and you have this spontaneous mental thought that you should comfort them, right? Or you have this spontaneous thought to call a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, right? We're not planning these things. They just kind of pop up in our head, right? These are mental actions, and mental actions are so important. In fact, all physical actions are necessarily preceded by a mental action, right? In order for you to give something to somebody, you have to first, your mind has to be like, okay, give, right? Otherwise, you're just going to be standing there like a statue. So these spontaneous mental thoughts are super important, right? And they happen to us a lot more than we think they do. But we don't always act on them. We are often talking ourselves out of these kind of instincts of kindness. I don't have time, or I don't want to, or what's the point? That's actually one of the biggest ones. That's what we're going to talk about today. It won't matter, right? That's one of the biggest ways we talk ourselves out of these kind of instincts of kindness, is we think this won't really matter, right? This won't make a difference. You ever thought that? I have. We kind of label it as this like small act of kindness, which is an interesting way to label things, right? When we label something as a small act, what's like the connotation there, right? It's like, man, it's nothing. It's insignificant, right? It's a small act of kindness, right? It's nothing. That's what we say. But is this true? Can we know for certain that this act is like insignificant, right? What we're going to investigate today, what we're going to start to gain a little insight on, is that we have no idea. We have no idea how impactful this small action can be. Joseph, or suspicious mind kicks in. That's a very good one, right? What are they going to do with this money that I gave them, right? Not sure, right? And we start to overanalyze, and we talk ourselves out of this like awesome instinct of kindness. Zully, minimalizing, yeah, absolutely. Minimalizing almost like subconsciously, just by using the word small, we're subconsciously minimalizing the act, right? So maybe from our perspective, it does seem kind of small and insignificant, but we can't say with certainty. We can't possibly know how impactful it will be. The only certainty is that if we do not do it, it will have no impact, right? it might have zero. We might do it and it have zero impact, maybe, right? But it might have a large impact, right? So we all kind of know this intellectually, right? You think about it, you're like, yeah, I know that. But we got to really be honest with ourselves if we fully believe it, right? Because if we fully, firmly believe this, then we would never doubt ourselves. We would never doubt these small acts of kindness that are kind of popping up, right? So we need to train through meditation, right? Through contemplating this. We need to become, it needs to become doubtless, right? We need to become familiar with the benefits of doing small acts of kindness. When you're familiar with the benefits of something, like really, you're like, yep, this is really good. What happens? You do it, right? You start to have natural effort towards this thing, right? So that's what we want to do. We want to start to familiarize our mind. There's that word again. Familiarize our mind with the benefits of small acts of kindness, right? What they can possibly do, right? And we do this through meditation, contemplation, like I said. Meditation is really good at giving us experiential understanding of something just by using our mind, right? Using our mind, our imagination, right? But we can also, we can also become familiar with it by seeing it firsthand, secondhand, right? Right? Seeing is believing, that old phrase, right? Sometimes that can really make us firmly believe in the impacts of these small acts. You've all done small acts of kindness, and probably can, if you thought about it enough, can think of one where you saw the benefits, right? I'm going to share a personal story. The moment that I firmly believed that small acts of kindness can help. And hopefully this story will kind of jog some of your own memories about things that you might have done, right? So before, I live in Colorado right now, but before I lived in Colorado, I lived in New York. I was born and raised there. And I lived and worked in New York City for a little over 10 years. And pretty much every day, I would, at least once a day, I would leave to go get like coffee or something like that. And I always walked down the same street, Spring Street. And I remember one day I was walking down Spring Street to go to get a coffee, and I saw a man sitting in like a little nook, right, with a cup out in front of him, and he was crying. And living in New York and some other big cities, we can kind of get a little desensitized to the homeless, right? But this really struck me for some reason. And I remember having this instinct of kindness arise, like I want to help him, right? So I gave some money and I said, I hope things get better soon. And I kind of moved on, right? That's kind of generally what we do, right? And as I was moving on, going to get my coffee, I started to think, that's not going to do anything, right? That little $1 or $2 that I gave him, that's not going to do anything. It won't make a difference, right? It won't make a difference. That's what I thought, right? So the next day, I go to get a coffee again, of course, got to fuel myself. And he wasn't there, right? And I started to wonder, I'm like, I wonder what he's doing. Like, I wonder where he is right now, right? Why he's not here. It's strange. Normally, I wouldn't really remember these things, but I started to think about it, right? So then the following week, I walked by to get coffee again, and sure enough, there he was, sitting in the same spot, right? And I was kind of excited. I've been thinking about it a little bit. And so I went up to him and I gave a little money, and I asked him what his name was. Right? I asked him, what is your name? And he barely looked at me, and he said, Steve. Right? And I held out my hand and to shake his hand. And I said, my name's Keith. Right? And there was this hesitation from him. Right? And in that moment, I started to realize that how few people have any interest in introducing themselves to this person, right? To this human being, right? And so eventually he kind of stuck his hand and smiled at me, and it was very nice, right? Shaking hands is something so insignificant, isn't it? Such a small thing, a small gesture. We do it all the time, right? But in this moment, this very small act was very impactful for him and for me too, right? Probably more impactful than that dollar that I gave him, right? So the next day I passed by and that I saw him and I said, "Hey, Steve, how's it going?" And he kind of looked up at me surprised and he said, "Most people don't remember me," right? I was like, oh my God, it's like heart-wrenching, right? Saying hi to somebody, right? Such a small act, insignificant. But to Steve, it was not small, right? It was very like, wow, you remembered me. It was quite nice. Right? So I decided that I was going to, I wanted Steve to know that people remembered him, right? This really kind of, it made an impact on me. And so I made a point to check in on him, right? So any day that I would walk by that spot to see if he was there. And if he was there, I'd strike up a conversation with him, just like you would with any friend. "Hey, I'm going to get a coffee. Do you want one?" Right? I got him a holiday card one time, which he kept in his backpack. And then very sad story, somebody stole his backpack at the shelter. And he said the thing that he was upset most was the card, right? We get cards all the time, don't we? We like look at it for a second. Maybe we read it, right? Chuck it. This card meant so much to him. This very small act meant so much to him, right? We talked about what he was going to do when he was no longer homeless. He said he wanted to work in a pizzeria. That he worked in a pizzeria before and he loved pizza. I love pizza. Who doesn't? And so we started talking about what's the best pizza in New York. Probably something nobody could agree on, right? It's just like a fun, natural thing that we had, just striking up a conversation, something very small, right? We talked about books. He loves mystery novels. I got him a mystery novel and he read it and we talked about it. It's just very small things, but to him, it made a really big difference. Felicia, hi, welcome. So Steve and I kind of developed this kind of natural friendship, right? It was really interesting. And I learned so much from Steve. I learned more from Steve than I could ever possibly imagine. Probably more than I've learned from anyone else in all my time in New York. I remember one time I asked him about his family, right? And he told me that he has a brother in New York. And I said, "Steve, why don't you contact him, right?" And he said he was too embarrassed to tell him that he was now homeless. And in my head, I'm like, "Steve, no, Steve, you got to call him, Steve. Like, I'm sure he'll want to help, right?" But then I started to think, like, man, we've all been there, right? We've all been at that point where we are so scared about the reaction somebody's going to have that we don't do something that we know is probably in our best interest, right? And I started to realize how powerful that feeling of fear can be, even for Steve, who here clearly would probably benefit from calling his brother. And he said that he was applied for government assisted housing and was waiting, right? And I was like, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, the amount of patience to wait for something like that, month after month after month. I get upset when somebody takes too long in front of me online, right? Or when I'm at a red light for too long, right? But Steve was sitting here for months waiting very patiently, right? So I learned a lot about, whenever I think of patience, I'm like, Steve, what would Steve do, right? So I learned a lot from Steve, right? Hey, Lindra, how you doing? After about 8 months since we first met, I passed by Steve again, and he was so happy to see me. Right? Probably the most happy anyone's ever been to see me. And he jumped up and he said, "I've been waiting to tell you, I got selected for the government housing in Queens," right? And we were so happy. We were talking about it. It was great, right? And he said, "I couldn't have done this without you." And my reaction was, "Steve, don't be ridiculous. I didn't do anything," right? It was just nothing stuff, right? And he said, "They were big things to me," right? That's what he said to me, right? And I started to realize that what Steve needed was a friend, right? Somebody to make him feel like he used to feel, right? To build up confidence a little bit, to let him know that he was remembered, that people cared, right? And I never saw Steve again, right? I never saw him again after he told me that. But every time I passed that spot for the rest of my time in New York, I always thought of him, always. And nothing I ever did for Steve was this grand gesture, right? I didn't do anything, it was all small, right? But to him, they were big. It's kind of had a snowball effect, right? All these little acts of kindness had a snowball effect of maybe building up his confidence a little bit, right? And they had a snowball effect on me too, right? I learned that my actions do matter. They do have an impact. Yeah. I think about Steve a lot. Steve's my reminder that small acts of kindness can make a big difference, right? And if you think about it, you probably have some examples in your own life where you've seen this come to fruition, right? So after Steve, I began to think about what other things I could do on my walk. Like, what other small acts of kindness could I do on my walk that might have the same kind of snowball effect, something that I thought was insignificant that might not be insignificant, right? And so I want to do a meditation. We're going to talk a little bit. Well, in the contemplation, I will lead us through this thought process, but we're going to think about, well, what can we do, right? What kind of things can we do? Did you enjoy that story? Sometimes I tell it, I get very choked up, so I'm glad I made it through. but it was just a really nice moment of seeing that a single person, without much effort, can make a large impact in other people's lives, right? Small acts of kindness, they can snowball. Okay. Great story. Thanks for sharing. No, it's, like I said, we all have those stories, right? We all have those stories. It might not be somebody like that, but we all have instances where a nothing gesture, right, can really lead to some change. It's important to remember. Okay, so I want to do a contemplation on this now. And if you're new to meditation, contemplation is essentially looking at the reflection when we clear away the raindrops, right? So we're going to analyze something. This is the real beauty of meditation. This is how you can really start to gain some insight into things, to familiarize your mind with something. Investigate it. We're going to investigate it. So today my leg is clear and ready for some SPF contemplation. All right, Crystal, here we go. Hey, Crystal, how you doing? So we're going to do a contemplation now. We'll start like we did before, right? We'll do a little breathing meditation, and then you're just going to kind of follow along with what I'm saying in the contemplation. I'll lead it, and pay attention for any moments where you notice your mind going like, oh, interesting, right? Those are, I call them aha moments, and they are very important. It is your mind kind of shifting a little bit and learning and becoming familiar with a concept. So pay attention to those. Like, when they happen, be like, interesting. Okay, cool. All right. Sound good? Any questions before we get started? There'll be plenty of time for questions afterwards if you want to stick around to do so. But if not, we will continue on with our contemplation on small acts of kindness. Okay. All right, so sit once again very comfortably. If you're laying down, that's fine too. No need to change anything about what you're doing. Just be comfortable, okay? And you can go ahead and close your eyes once again. And let's check in with ourselves again. How are you feeling now? Different than before? The same? Just notice. All we're doing is noticing what our mind is doing, what our mind feels like right now. We're practicing mindfulness. And having checked in, we can turn our attention once again to our breathing in and out of our nose. Very gently, very naturally. In and out. Try to follow your full in-breath and your full out-breath. Enjoy sitting here, relaxing, breathing, meditating. In and out. When you notice your mind has wandered, just gently guide it back. Very gently guide your attention back. Back to focusing on your breathing. In and out. Very naturally. As we start to relax into our breathing, we may notice some things about breathing that we hadn't noticed before. Maybe you notice how the air feels cool when you breathe in on the tip of your nose, or how it feels warmer when you breathe out. Your shoulders rising and falling with each breath. You are focused on breathing, and so you're starting to enjoy the little things about breathing itself. In and out. Very gently, very naturally. You are meditating. You're doing it. You're doing wonderfully. How incredible. How incredible that you, with nothing other than your breath, can begin to relax a little bit. How wonderful that our mind is naturally peaceful, and we can tap into it when we need to, whenever we want to. Just by breathing. So after breathing in this way for a little while, maybe we start to feel a bit more relaxed, a bit more calm, warm, light, whatever it is. We're starting to clear away the raindrops. The raindrops that are obscuring the reflection on our still lake, our still mind. And so now, with some of those raindrops removed, we can look at the reflection in the lake. We can investigate something. Today we're going to investigate small acts of kindness, what they mean, and how we can do them. So just follow along with what I'm saying and pay attention to those aha moments I was talking about earlier. When we think about small acts of kindness, there's this subconscious thought, subconscious association with the word small, that they are insignificant, that they do not do much, they do not matter. This will often lead to us not doing them, not following through on our instincts of kindness, mental thoughts of kindness. But how do we know they won't do anything? Can you say it with certainty? We have no idea how impactful our actions will be. These small acts of kindness that seem insignificant can have wonderful outcomes. Let's imagine for a second you're walking into the bathroom at a restaurant and you see a paper towel on the ground, piece of trash. Sometimes we have the instinct to pick it up. Sometimes we talk ourselves out of it. That's not my job. We think that picking up a piece of trash will have no impact, no great impact on anything. But we do not know this. We assume we do not know it. It is someone's job to pick up that trash. What if you picking up that piece of trash saves them the extra 2 seconds? And that extra 2 seconds lets them miss one red light on their way home. And they get to say goodnight to their son or daughter before they fall asleep. Maybe they work late and they usually don't get to do that. We have no idea what picking up that used paper towel will do. And so we should do it. If it comes across our mind, we should do it. Just think about that for a little while. Let it kind of sink in. Think about some ways you might be able to do a small act of kindness like picking up the paper towel and what kind of impact it might have. However ridiculous it might seem, we just don't know. So we should do it. Okay, and when you're ready, you can relax. Open your eyes. How am I doing on time? Oh, I'm good. I thought that was going to be a longer one. So that is what we would call kind of like a full meditation, right? So we relax our mind through breathing meditation. That's step one. And then two, we're going to look at something. We're going to look at anything, right? If you've been coming here for a while or interested in coming back, we'll talk about a lot of different things. We contemplate a lot of different things: anxiety, uncertainty, where happiness comes from, how to be more productive. All these things, we can look at them, just with a clear mind and see what we can see, right? So this contemplation was all about trying to use our imagination to recognize that however silly however convinced we might be that this picking up that paper towel is not going to do anything, we can't say that. We can't say that with certainty. We don't know. It's possible that what I said might be true, right? And so such a nothing act for us, we do it, right? And maybe it'll have some really awesome impacts, right? Maybe you're a germaphobe and that's not a good one. But there's so many things throughout the day that fall into this category. Like, I remember when I first moved here, there was a young kid across the street. I think he might have been 7. And we were just outside, and I said hi, and I was like, "Oh, do you like video games?" Because I love video games. We started talking about Star Wars, and his mom came up to me after and was like, "Thank you so much for talking to him about this. He has nobody to talk to about this stuff, and he loves it so much." And it's like, I wasn't even trying to do anything like nice. I was just talking to him, about something that I love. And now we chat all the time when we see each other, that was, something that it didn't even occur to me. And it had a big impact. It might not be this like amazing revolutionary thing for him, but like, he's got a friend that he can talk to about this stuff now, which is kind of cool. Cooking dinner for your significant other, maybe you're not really in the mood to do it, but maybe doing that makes them, not have to worry about having to be a part of that process for one night, and they can relax a little bit more. And then because they're relaxed a little bit more, maybe they, do better on the project they're working on. Like, we just don't know. That's the point. We just don't know what our small gestures might turn into. So it's kind of fun to think about what they might turn into. And then the more familiar we get with the idea that we don't really know and that we might as well do it because it might turn into something awesome, maybe we'll do it. What about small acts of kindness for ourselves? Wow, great question, Zully. Great question. It falls into the same category, really, right? Meditation's a good one, right? You all took time out of your day here. Maybe this is your first time. You're like, I don't think it's gonna work, right? But maybe this little kind of hour we've spent together will spark something that will, lead you down a path of thinking about how you can help other people, or how you can believe how you're able to relax yourself and like maybe become really good at it. And we just don't know, right? So this is like kind of a little act of kindness on yourself being here, that might turn into something great, So whether it's for other people or for ourselves, the point is the same, right? The point is the same. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. I don't normally talk about that in this lesson, and I probably should. That's a very astute observation. And it's very important, right? Sometimes we need to, patience is an act of kindness on ourselves, right? To be patient with ourselves, right? So if we can kind of work on our patience, it might have massive payout for us down the line. So yeah, it's a really good point, really good question. Thanks. Any other questions about any of this? Hopefully hopefully, if nothing else, you found it to be relaxing or thought-provoking or a nice story. That's really where you should be at when like getting into meditation. Now, you just want to kind of like shake up your mind a little bit, get it thinking in a different way. So if you walk away from this with feeling like, oh, that was kind of cool, or no, that was interesting. That was definitely an interesting experience. Come back next week. We'll talk about something else. I don't know what it is. I never really do to the last minute, but it'll be something new that we haven't talked about before. And if you did enjoy this and you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that's super generous. Here's a great small act of kindness. It's nothing for you to click one button, but for me, it like means everything. I'm like, oh yes, it's wonderful. Thank you. Honestly, I love it. So that's a nice small act of kindness, and you get notified when I go live if you ever forget, which is a nice small act of kindness on the programmers of YouTube. Contemplative experience was enjoyed. Jacqueline, I'm glad you had a good experience. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being here. And I also do private instruction. So if maybe you've been coming for a while, or you're like, you know what, this is really cool, I want to get into this. I do private one-on-one instructions, or if you're more comfortable with a couple friends, we can do like group. And the advantage of that is we can really kind of dig into something that is particular to what you're going through. So if that's interesting to you, I do offer those. One-on-one session is $25 for a virtual session, and I'll put my email in the chat now. That way, if you have any questions at all, hold on, I have to concentrate single-pointedly on spelling meditation. I always spell it. Always comes out mediation, which is wrong. Okay, I'm now back to you. So that's my email. If you have an interest in a one-on-one session or a group, or I do corporate events or for schools, email me. We'll figure something out. Or if you have any questions about any of this, email me at any time, and we'll talk about it. I always love talking and chatting. Joseph, feeling kinder to others. Thanks. That's the goal, right? The goal is like to believe, and like you are already kinder you're already so kind to others. We just don't really pay attention to it. That's why noticing the instincts of kindness is so important, right? We have to like pay attention, like, oh my God, like, look, I naturally wanted to help this person. I should do this. Even if it seems small, I should do this because I just don't know. I don't know. It might be really helpful to them. Just like with Steve, right? Started with nothing, like one little nothing, and then another little nothing and another little nothing. And we turned out to be really good friends. Right. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I definitely enjoyed having you here. I couldn't do this without you guys. So thanks for taking time out of your day to be here. And I hope to see you next week. All right. Take care.